And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. And we're going to be heading into early October come tomorrow, Wednesday into Thursday. There's an area of low pressure just off of the Kamchatka coast that's going to stay outside the Gulf of Anadyr and then pass near and south of St. Lawrence Island into Norton Sound as we head into Wednesday and early Thursday. And this frontal system will have some precipitation with it, including rain and snow. Nothing extremely heavy. Winds are not going to be especially strong, but with that front there will be IFR conditions all the way along the Seward Peninsula into the western, southwest interiors, and then trailing out the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Chain. And along this front, by Thursday, we will find a weaker secondary low taking shape around Cook Inlet. So this is going to be advancing northeastward and eastward here as we go through the midweek period. There also could be a little pocket of IFR conditions around Utqiagvik for early Wednesday morning. Then on Wednesday afternoon, you see the IFR conditions lower Chukchi Sea, Kotzebue Sound, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula into the western southwest interior. We have some MVFR conditions also spreading a little further across the central and northern interior, and then we also see that out here over the western Gulf. VFR conditions should be the rule northeastern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. There is a stronger area of low pressure located south of Haida Gwaii, but that influence of that system should remain south into parts of British Columbia and Vancouver. And for Thursday morning, we do find IFR conditions along parts of the Alaska Range, especially up there maybe toward Isabel Pass and down along Prince William Sound, the eastern Kenai into the northern Gulf Coast, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains. Pockets of IFR possible along the eastern Brooks Range, back here middle Yukon into the west central interior, south side of the Seward Peninsula for Thursday morning in the vicinity of Golovin and Nome, and then also around areas of Bristol Bay, and then way out toward the western Aleutians we do find IFR conditions out there. And just getting into Thursday with that remnants of that front in the flow ahead of it there with some lower cloud cover, lower ceilings, and some precipitation. We have IFR conditions expected for Thursday afternoon along much of the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast, all the way back toward Prince William Sound, and then in the far north, pockets of it along the Brooks Range, and especially lower Chukchi Sea, western Seward Peninsula, back toward St. Lawrence Island. And just kind of to tip you off for what's coming up here for the weekend, there's going to be a stronger low come up out of the North Pacific into the Bering Sea. This is going to be a milder system, and as that works its way northeastward, it's going to pull some milder air and mainly rain and some windier conditions all through parts of the Aleutian, Alaska Peninsula, and up along the southwest and western coast as we go through the weekend. Keep that in mind. Anaktuvik Pass for Wednesday, up there in the Brooks Range, east central Brooks Range, VFR conditions becoming MVFR. Same thing for Adigan Pass, VFR becoming MVFR. The west arm of the Alaska Range should generally see IFR conditions, especially along the spine of the range and the west side. Now, the east side will generally be MVFR, the entrance there to Lake Clark and Merrill. Same thing, Rainy Pass, generally IFR, especially the center of the pass to the west, but MVFR along the eastern portion and east entrance. And Windy Pass, VFR becoming MVFR for Wednesday. Same thing, Isabel Pass, VFR in the morning becoming MVFR as that moisture begins to increase with that frontal system approaching from the west and southwest. Mentasta Pass will be far enough east into the drier air, so VFR conditions there Wednesday. Tanita Pass, generally VFR conditions, but the south side of the pass, the mountains out over that region, will become MVFR Wednesday. And as we go into Chilkoot and White Pass, we are looking for VFR conditions there during the day Wednesday. So taking a look at what we have coming up here for Wednesday morning. There is certainly colder temperatures across the central northern mainland, below freezing there at or below at the surface. And as you drop southward, there is a little bit this troughiness out here associated with that low out over this region. And the frontal system is not really going to bump up the freezing levels aloft a whole lot, though they do rise a bit. 6,000 feet there above there as you get toward Kodiak Island, and 8,000 and 10,000 feet south of the Alaska Peninsula. and we find some freezing levels near 10,000 feet back toward the central Aleutians. But we overall have seen a cooling trend for the past week here across the northern, central, western interior. But that, as I mentioned, the weekend, this stronger low that's going to come up the Bering is going to try to pull some of this warmer air aloft back up here, especially up through the southwest coastline into the interior over the weekend. So any cloud cover, thicker cloud cover producing any precipitation, we're looking at above 3,000 feet. There could be some moderate icing along and south of the Brooks Range into the along the Yukon River and south to the Alaska Range above 4,000 feet, south central areas rising to above 6,000 feet, Western Gulf maybe a little bit above 8,000 feet there off of Prince of Wales Island. And then where the warmer air aloft lies, the eastern Aleutians could see some moderate icing above 10,000 feet, especially Wednesday afternoon. And here is the upper level wind flow at 30,000 feet jet stream level. We have a trough here along the west coast, a jet core of 110 to 120 knots out of the west here along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. And as we bring it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we still see that troughiness along the west coast. And winds anywhere from 40 to locally 50 knots from Kodiak Island to areas of the North Pacific, south and east of the Alaska Peninsula. On the backside, we have northerly winds 40 to 50 knots across much of the central Bering down into the central Aleutians, and then some stronger winds back out here toward the Kamchatka Peninsula, East Asia at 60 to 70 knots. And then at 3,000 feet, you can see that circulation around that stronger low that's south of Haida Gwaii and southwest of Vancouver Island, but that should stay south of the Panhandle. And then we find some localized winds, 30, 35 knots, Western Gulf back just south of the Alaska Peninsula and the North Pacific for Wednesday. On the backside of this circulation, north winds of 40 knots in the central areas of the Bering, just northwest of the Pribilovs. And then across the central Aleutians, winds could locally be at 30, 35 knots out of the north. And as a result, we don't have any widespread, like considerable moderate turbulence, but there could be some isolated turbulence starting in the far north, maybe just off of the Lisburn Peninsula, surface to 3,000 feet. And then back here in areas Shelikof straight up into Kodiak Island, there could be some isolated moderate turbulence, surface to 5,000 feet, and then further back to the west, some isolated moderate turbulence around St. Matthew, St. Paul, and then back out toward the central Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet on Wednesday.